So welcome everybody to this transdisciplinary seminar, The Power of Play Co-Designing with Children Landscapes of Changes. It's a seminar, my name is Laura Cipriani, for those who do not know me. I work in the section of landscape architecture. I'm mostly dealing with landscapes in relation to climate change. I will tell you how this seminar started and why we are here today. Today is the first day of class of Ecumenius course, which is a kind of special course for teaching innovation. And teaching innovations, this started 1 year ago. With this tender that came out, was awarded by this little grant, which will give the possibility to explore pedagogical innovations, especially in landscape. And the title was Climate Changes Again, Co-Designing with Children the Landscapes of the Future. It was coming from the recognition that today's new generations, and in particular children, will face many consistent landscape changes in their lifetime. So their lifetime they are going to address the climate change issues. So how can we involve somewhat younger generations in projecting a different future? How can we make them aware of what can come with climate change, but also to think about this concept in a positive attitude, because the invitation is to act collectively to save our planet Earth, starting from landscape, from nature, and have somewhat an emotional knowledge in contact with nature to tackle the climate transition. And this is actually crucial for trying to have a different perspective, but not necessarily climate change has to be negative, but maybe we can tackle it in a different way. So I will try to give a brief introduction on the concept of play, and that's why play is so much important, especially in the landscape discipline, and probably how play is not a new topic in the landscape discipline, but has been on the ground since a very long time. And I will also try to give a little introduction on some pedagogists who try to embed this concept of nature, of landscape, with children in their teaching methodology. So if we look at play, play can be considered a play, or play is a game or a game. There is a big difference because play is something that is spontaneous. It comes spontaneously. There's no purpose in playing things. And I really like the etymology because play also is considered like a dance. So there is this idea of an artistic component of play. If we think about game instead, it's actually very organized. It does contain the idea of a rule, of something stiff. Or maybe sometimes you have a competition. You think about a game that does have a competition. So there is a more organized system where you have the idea that the game has a more scientific somewhat approach. Whereas, like we said, plays has this nice attitude of dancing, of thinking, of being together, of finding an harmonic way of approaching the landscape. And when you go through the terms of play in the words and items, most of these words are coming from the theater, from music. So they are very much linked with this idea of dancing and trying to find an artistic way of dealing with a special environment. When we think about play, we immediately think about men, and in particular children, the homo ludens, where everybody has a playful attitude. But in nature, also animals are playing. And over here you see two kangaroos that are actually working together and playing and learning from each other. And even in nature, actually play is a dance. These were some young flowers, sunflowers, at the beginning of a stage of life, and they were actually moving to find their own space like a dance. So they were trying to test the special environment. So men, but animals and nature and plants are actually dancing and playing at the beginning of their life. When we think about play, play is an action, but then we have a place. So what is actually important, and you see this Peter Bruegel children's game, is not only the 90 games that are shown here, but the landscape in the background. You see up at top the landscape, and also you see the city. So the special environment where we are working is actually crucial in defining that special environment. In the landscape discipline, there was a landscape architect, very famous in our discipline, who is Carl Theodor Sorensen, who made this interesting garden. In this case, a geometrical garden made up of playful elementary forms, someone to play with the gardening. What is probably little known is that at the beginning of his career, at the end of the Second World War, he started thinking that children actually should have somewhat a giant playground, which is simply a place, a landscape, where they have to be space and work with it and destroy it, and to be completely anti-aesthetics. But they can test, they can test on the ground, they can test on a landscape that is not planned in any form. There is also a famous American, Japanese sculpture that usually is named in landscape architecture as well, Isamu Nobuki. And he actually is one of the first promoter of the idea of the non-directed play somewhat. So play can happen even in forms like this, in landscape like this, which are completely surreal, abstract. And so the child can interpret this landscape and make his own place without any kind of direction. So there is this freedom of working in the space. We are in the Netherlands, and most of you know Aldo van Eyck. Aldo van Eyck, at the end of the Second World War, he tried to manage in the city of Amsterdam places which are completely bombed. And he made these playgrounds. What is actually interesting in his work is that he worked on a city level. So he made more than 800 playgrounds with places which were completely abandoned, and he tried to connect them. So to work at a city level eye is something that we can think about in landscape. And in our discipline and in the urban discipline, the idea of game is actually very much linked not only to children, but also as a playful attitude in exploring the space. These are the situationists, okay, the board, the naked cities. We are in the middle of the 50s. And it was the idea of exploring the city with a kind of psychogeography, so being driven by the elements of the city. And this led to some important and very well-known utopias, like this one by Constant, The New Babylon, where they were thinking that the man would be the homo ludens, so somebody who was not working anymore and could actually play into the special environment. And there are many people in those years, in the 60s, also having this kind of playful attitude, even in the body, in exploring the landscape and understanding the special conditions of the space. What is actually crucial is also to find out that in pedagogy, there are lots of pedagogists that worked on somewhat in playing the landscape. And one of these is Comenius, the ones that is sponsoring this grant and this course. Comenius was a Czech educator. He published widely, especially in this Didactica Opera Omnia. And he made very interesting books, like this one, which is the Orbis Sensarium Pictus. For the first time, he started talking about pedagogy that is driven by knowledge, and this knowledge is given from nature and nature from God. So there is this, what he calls pansophilia, this knowledge that comes from nature and from the spiritual parts of nature that are deeply connected with God. And what is also interesting that in this book, for the first time, you find, this kind of first children picture book. For now, it's normal. Whereas at both times, this is the first time that you find the drawings for the children, and you see all these letters and this alphabet. What he says is, let it be given to children into their hands to delight themselves withal as they please, with the sight of the pictures. So the senses are the ones that are very strictly linked with the child's experience. In a second book, which is entitled The Labyrinth of the World and Paradise of the Earth, we are in 1631, he imagines that the city and the spatial environment is a labyrinth, it's a game, it's a play, where everybody has to find his own way, not only children, but each of us. A second person that is crucial for sure is Maria Montessori. Most of you know her. Maria Montessori is an Italian pedagogist. She published this interesting book, The Discovery of the Child, and she was envisioning education as a cosmic education, where the natural component were part of this education. This is a diagram that shows her idea of pedagogy, and if you see that the ecological view is actually part of this system, so ecology is crucial in the understanding of the spatial environment. And she was teaching to children to go outside. Here we are in the house of the child in Rome, and these children are actually working outside because there is a learning process that comes, to cultivate the land and to be in the outdoors. A third person I would like to mention is Colin Ward. Colin Ward is an urbanist. He worked especially in the 70s, 80s, 90s. He published two main works. One is The Child in the City, and the second one is The Child in the Country. What he tries to vehiculate as an idea is that the gaze that we should adopt in understanding the city environment is the one of the child, the view from the floorscape, from the ground, which is very helpful in understanding major concepts on how this place, how cities are built. And in the second book, in The Child in the Country, he actually says that the child in the country does have a deeper knowledge of the environment, and mainly because he is exposed much more to the natural component. The younger the child, the closer his eye level is to the ground, and this is the reasons why the floorscape is much more significant for a child. So even a floorscape in a city has to be planned. Another person I would like to mention is Bruno Munari. Bruno Munari was an Italian designer that at the end of his life, he worked widely with children and published many books with them. He works, these are some of the books, but really it's a huge list, Drawing a Tree, Drawing in the Sun, Roses in the Salad. He tried to link the idea that the children can build on imagination, and imagination that is related to nature. This is a sample, Roses in the Salad. He took some salad and chopped it, and he put the stamps of the chopped salad with the color, and immediately this becomes something else, becomes an imaginary island, or something that we can explore with imagination. Another work that I would like to mention is Jeu, which means a game by Bernard Lassus. For those who are landscape architects, Bernard Lassus is a very well-known French landscape architect. And he tried to work mostly on the idea of game through imagination. He proposed, for example, in this exhibition, a simple paper with a red dot inside. And he asked the people to draw a landscape, to draw a space. And you see that all these imaginary dots became something else. And the imagination of each of us shaped different landscapes. And they were also exhibited. When we talk about pedagogies and in architecture, in landscape, there are many radical pedagogies that try to involve different disciplines together. This is, for example, the Institute of Architecture Valparaiso, who experimented from the 50s and the 70s, different forms of play with theater, poetry, architecture, environment. And this was done also by other people like Roles Alfrin, who was a landscape architect, an American landscape architect in the 60s and 70s, including the possibility of gaming in the landscape outdoor, or by Kulik. This is a game of Morel Hill. So there is the idea that pedagogies can include the different ways of exploring the space, and how actually the space can become a game somewhat. What are we going to do with the Comenius course? The course deals with climate change as a game. We're going to have 9 students, some of them are sitting here, plus 1 student assistant that is going part of this course. And as you see, they're coming from this faculty, but from different disciplines. So it means landscape architecture, urban design, which are somewhat relatives, but they are not the same. Plus, we are going to have 23 children from Voorburg, from Royal Van Priesten. They are going to be 10, 12 years old in this Comenius course, and then they're going to be the 2 teachers of the primary and tertiary school, plus also the parents will be involved in this process. We will work on climate change, but we will pick up one peculiar gaze, and the gaze will be the one of water and soil, which do play a crucial role in the climate picture. Think about the soil, not only think about the soil, but it's more carbon is stored in the soil rather than in the atmosphere or in the vegetation. So it's actually a very close look on that. So we will have a scientific approach and together an artistic approach. So there is a knowledge that is scientific, but then this knowledge has to be an emotional knowledge in contact with nature to tackle the climate transition. We are going to have mainly 3 parts, and this course is going to be divided into 3 parts. One is going to be reading and playing the landscape. The second one with a workshop outdoor, and then co-designing the landscape with an indoor co-design workshop with children. And finally, the third one will be through creating the landscape with an on-site dissemination event. So the first one, exploring and playing, reading the landscape, will be set up here in Delft. We'll be working in a site that is not far from the university, and it's contains called Delft Hout, with a lake and a forest and some rural areas. It's an interesting place because in the past it was actually dealing with peat excavation, you know, that peat was used for energy purposes. And peat was storing a lot of carbon dioxide. So it's a nice place. Plus, we are going to deal with this biodynamic farming, which is present there, and they are very nicely already aware of what are the problems of the areas. But then we're going to have temporary place at the very beginning. So we have a scientific knowledge of the site, and we will go also with the artistic approach. And this artistic approach will always be linked with the scientific approach, knowing, for example, the soil, knowing and testing the soil. These are some soil tests. They seem to be artistic, despite the fact there is a lot of knowledge in exploring these spots. And then also think about mud painting, or maybe the knowledge of the vegetation that will be there, that will be the starting point of making children aware of what is there and knowing the barks, for example, and understanding what is the vegetation. In this phase, we will also propose, of course, a landscape plan. So we will go up in scale, trying to put together all these elements in a bigger plan. This is, for example, a work done by T. Frank in Girona, who worked in the whole city of Girona with a simple idea, cutting the grass. Just simply cutting the grass. He made this artistic component, and he was able to work in that with many little elements, artistic elements that were done in the landscape view. The second part will be dealing with co-designing landscape climate changes. What do we mean with co-design? We are going to work with children, but also university students, with the teachers are co-designers, and also think about that nature will be also the other co-designer. And this is a trend that is actually very typical in the landscape process. We will have this kind of co-design practices in an imperfect way. We will not be perfect, but we try actually to collaborate for this climate battle continuously and find a way in which, with some sketches and models, being able to select somewhat what we would like to do with the landscape. Third phase, we are going to be on site, and we are going to co-create this landscape. We invited the children, we invited the parents, and hopefully they will also come during these months. And we will start doing something and being on site, being open to the power of ideas that will come out from this process, creating possibilities. Save the date. 19th of June, we will have the first installation and dissemination outside event in Delft. A second group of children will come out that day to test the climate games that were planned by other children. So we'll have a double test from children who never been experienced this installation before. And the 24th of June, in the Berlage room, in this room, we are going to present the final presentation of the first results. We start today with this conference seminar. I really thank for the speaker that came throughout the world, really. We are going to have 4 presentations, plus a roundtable at the end in the morning. Then we are going to have lunch right here, and we will have 2 other presentations and a roundtable, and we will finish with some drills. So first, we start with Valerio Perna, who will be online, and he will talk about playful activity as a design strategy, rules and freedoms for a play grammar. The second intervention will be done by Alison Goss, who will try to see who is the child in nature, ideas and theories to work with. So we will take educational perspectives. The third intervention will be done by Mathieu Gillet. He is an expert in co-designing with children, and he's coming from industrial design, and he's telling us the story of co-designing the outdoors with children and how actually we can work with them. The fourth lecture will be done by Roberto Pasini from the University of Bologna. He is an architect and a landscape architect, and he's going to have this presentation on Monterey, on this playing becoming an animal. So the idea of the embodiment of being an animal in the landscape for biodiversity loss. In the afternoon, we will have Maguilon de Jampons, who is a lawyer from the Council of Europe. She worked on the Landscape Education Convention, and in particular, she will present a pedagogical booklet that was done for primary schools. And finally, we will end with a landscape architect, Belinda Tato from Ecosistema Urbano. She is going to present a project on dreaming the future that was done in the Bahamas, where the children are trying to give them their dreams, and these dreams became somewhat installation. So let me finish with this quote before we go to Valerio Perna. Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. At the end, over there in that table, you will find this paper with a green dot this time. It's a Bernard Lassus idea, but will be reconverted somewhat in something different, because I kindly ask you to make a drawing of climate change and landscape topic and to include this red dot inside your drawing. We will collect them afterwards during the lunchtime. So thank you for being here, and now we start with the first presentation. Thank you all.